I got another very funny man. This guy, how about this man? 80 years old, and he's got the balls to come up here and do comedy. And he does it well.
Now, as we're walking through the cocktail lounge, I chanced to see two extremely attractive, mature ladies sitting at the bar. And as I walked by the two ladies, I heard the one lady say, "When the hell did we get so old?" And I said, "Old? Old? You think you're old? I'll show you old. Every toilet seat I sit on, my scrotum is in the water." Now that's old. Now, I used to live in Palisades Park, New Jersey, and I had a doctor that has his office in Fort Lee. You know where that is, north of the George Washington Bridge on the Jersey side. And on one of my visits, he notices the bald spot on the top of my head. And he says, "I got just the thing for that, Propecia." He writes out a prescription and he says, "Guaranteed to put hair on a bowling ball." Well, I took Propecia every day, every week, for a whole year. And I checked the top of my head, not one single new hair. But not to be denied, I had a 3-foot-long hair hanging down from my scrotum. And I liked it, I raised it, and I took care of it. And in the winter, it wasn't a problem. But in the summer, it was very embarrassing. When I was standing by the pool in my swimming trunks, my granddaughter liked to swing on it. And she's 22 years old. I had a friend of mine that I met last week. Knew him from high school. He was a year ahead of me. He's now 81 years old. So during the course of our conversation, he happens to tell me he takes 2 Viagra pills every night, 7 days a week, every week. And I was shocked. I said, "You can't do that. Eventually it's going to kill you." So now 2 days later, I run into another friend of mine from high school, and he tells me how our mutual friend just passed away. And I says, "How the hell could that be? I was just talking to him last week. How did it happen?" He says, "Well, he woke up one morning, jumped out of bed, tripped over his slippers, and pole vaulted out the window." I told him, 22 stories. Now, when I get done in the morning, I shower, I get dressed, I come down to the kitchen and I sit at the breakfast table. And while I'm waiting for my wife to get done with the breakfast, I read the paper. And invariably, the news is always the same. This guy raped this girl, this man raped this woman, this guy raped this lady. I swear to God, I don't know how they do it. A woman, she'll punch you, she'll kick you, she'll knee you in the groin, she'll scratch you, and she'll keep her legs crossed. I don't know how they do it. Even when they help me, I can't put it in. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you one joke. And the title of the joke is "The Most Beautiful Song in All the World." Now this little guy dressed in a black suit, a black Homburg, and a black briefcase walks into this bar, sits on a bar, puts his briefcase down, folds his arm in the briefcase, puts his head on his arm, and he's sobbing uncontrollably. He can't stop. Now at the end of the bar is the bartender, an ex-punk. with the bent nose and the cauliflower ears. And he hears the little guy crying, so he comes down and he says, "What's the matter, little guy? You got a problem?" Little guy can't stop crying. He's crying and sobbing and crying. He says, "Look, little guy, tell me what's wrong. Maybe I can help you." Little guy raises his head, he wipes his eyes, blows his nose. He says, "I wrote the most beautiful song in all the world. I've taken it to hundreds of publishers. Nobody will publish it." He says, "Is that your problem?" The bartender, the pub, he says, "You take your music, you go over to the piano, you spread your music out, and you play. If I like it, I'll publish it." The little guy's happy, he jumps down, he takes his briefcase, spreads the music. Now for a half hour, this bartender with the bug nose and the cauliflower ears, he's listening to this music, and he's crying. There's tears coming down his eyes. He says, "That's the most beautiful song I ever heard." Little guy comes over. He says, "Little guy," he says, "that's the most beautiful song I ever heard." He says, "I'm going to publish it." He says, "What's the name? What's the title?" And the little guy says, "I love you so fucking much I could shit." As Charlie Chan would say, "Thank you so much."
John Moreno, give him a nice hand. Wasn't that great? John Moreno. Book him fast.